each and every one of you deserves thank you. We gather under a banner, each one of us, and that banner reads, "Life is sacred." The one who pens that banner is our merciful Lord. I think in the book of Genesis, God is the giver of life. And we know, my dear friends, that each and every human life is absolutely precious. It's sad to me that we, in our sick society, say some life has value. If you can run so fast, if your skin is clear, if your teeth are white. But there's no ifs in God's holy word. The psalmist says, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You knit me together, O God." That's true of every human being. Now that we can gather here this afternoon openly and freely reminds me that we have a lot to be thankful for, don't we, in our land. It's a land of freedom. It's a land of beauty. From the Gulf Stream waters in the south to the lakes shimmering in the north to the Appalachians in the east to the Rockies in the west. A land of beauty indeed. And a land with achievement. I ponder that of all the nations of this earth, only one, our country, has left footprints on the dust of the moon. And we can think of those serving in our military. Places like Shiloh and Vicksburg, Okinawa remind us of the courage that exists in this land. But I believe always in being honest. And the truth is, my dear friends, in this land of beauty, there's ugliness. We have every cause to be concerned. Just down the hall, not that many years ago, I was visiting with a lady considering joining our Redeemer Lutheran Church. We were going through the 10 Commandments. We got to the 5th commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." And this young woman began to weep. She was the only one with me at the time. It turned out that years before, she had had 2 abortions. And she told me of her guilt and of her shame, and of how in the night she would hear those children crying. That's what we never hear, do we? We don't hear the truth in our society. We don't hear the truth that life is sacred, that life is a gift. Since 1973, can we even fathom the number of dear, precious ones who have been murdered? Now, even in this congregation, people have taken exception to that. But I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to be intimidated, because, you know, we should fear God and not men. Some of you know that in my life on September 11th, things really changed. I had a sister on that flight leaving Dulles Airport going to Washington, leaving Washington going to Los Angeles. My sister loved children. She didn't have any of her own. But that very day, her life would be taken in a terrorist attack. I liken that to the terrorist attack here every day, when 4,000 little ones are murdered. There is a court higher than the Supreme Court of this land, and that's God's court. And my dear friends, it stands. Thou shalt not kill. This coldness and this callousness. In Chicago, a man was shot to death as he sat waiting in his car at a red light. A teenager pointed a gun at him and shot him. When asked, "Why did you do that?" the cold, callous answer was, "I didn't like the way he looked at me." That's what's wrong. Indifference, coldness, callousness. Isn't it incredibly sad that the most dangerous place to be in our land isn't Chicago or isn't some alley in a big city? It's the womb. And those terror attacks go on and on and on. I will tell you this, God won't stand for it. Any nation that preys on its children has no future. In the book of Proverbs we read, "Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people." Don't grow weary. God will give us strength. Don't grow silent. God will give us a voice. I named names. And in a sermon, I pointed to our blight just down the block on the landscape of our city. How absolutely shameful. I drive by there. I see you. I commend you. How will things ever change without people like you? What did Cain say after he murdered his brother? In indifference and coldness and callousness, he said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" I am my brother's keeper. Let us speak up for those dear, dear little ones. One last thing. They said I had 10 minutes. I think I'm over that. I want to encourage you. It was said I had 3 children. I have 4. My wife and I were expecting a few years ago another child. What a blessing. We had actually put cribs away and the strollers away, and we got them all out again. How wonderful. This life is a gift. I wasn't always able to go to my wife's appointments with her, so we had a checkup at about 12 weeks. And I thought, I'm going to go this day. I was led by God to go there. I actually got there first, and my wife came in. I was very glad. It's always good when our wives are glad to see us, isn't it? Glad to see them. We went back, and the gal doing the ultrasound, I could tell something wasn't right. That little one could see its preciousness, the little hands and feet and head, and that little one had died in the womb. Very traumatic, very difficult. Here's the point, and it's not easy for me to say. A couple of mornings later, in our bathroom at home, my wife delivered that little baby. And it meant so much to her that she just held it in her hands. Beautiful little child. That's my other child. And we had that little one for a time. It's life. That is where a child belongs, in loving arms. We held that child just briefly, of course. But let's continue to work and to pray to our gracious Savior so that children are where they belong, in loving arms. Thanks and God's blessings.